Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 59 of the All Dolphins podcast, the second on this day, Tuesday, August 29th, because it's that kind of day. This episode dedicated to a former defensive starter on the perfect season team of 1972, linebacker by the name of Doug Swift. Fun fact, later became, after his playing career, either a dentist or an anesthesiologist. Not 100% sure which one, but it's one of those two. So I'm going to guess that's before your time, though, also.
Am I right? Way before my time. I didn't even know there was a gentleman named Doug Swift on the team.
Okay. As mentioned before, this is Roster Cutdown Day, obviously a very big day. So we're going to start off by running down the moves the Dolphins officially made today. There had been some that had been leaked before, but this became official. They announced those about, four-ish. Released. These are guys who will not have to go through waivers, can sign with any team at any time. Justin Bethel, Robbie Chosen, Myles Gaskin, Deshaun Hand, Tyler Croft, Parry Nickerson, Cedric Ogbuehi, Jamal Perry, and Malik Reed. That's 9 players. 9 others were waived. Those guys will have can be waived through the waiver claim period of tomorrow, which is at noon on Wednesday. Those people are players: cornerback Ethan Bonner, tight end Tanner Connor, linebacker Cameron Good, tackle Ryan Hayes, tight end Elijah Higgins, wide receiver Braylon Sanders, cornerback Bryce Thompson, offensive lineman Alama Oluwave, and cornerback Trill Williams. Dolphins reach an injury settlement with rookie wide receiver Dawood Davis, who sustained that really scary-looking injury at Jacksonville on Saturday, but thankfully appears to be okay. They placed cornerback Nick Needham on the reserve PUP. He had been on active PUP. Now he doesn't count against the 53, but he's out for 4 games. And finally, on those 2 moves are on that list, cornerback Keon Cross and tight end Eric Saubert placed on injured reserve. 2 trades today: Dan Feeney to the Chicago Bears for a 2024 6th-round pick. Cornerback Noah Benagany to the Dallas Cowboys for fellow cornerback Kelvin Joseph, who was the 2021 2nd-round pick. Man, that's a lot of stuff. Omar, where do you want to start?
Super busy day. Let's start with the trades from the standpoint of Dan Feeney. We woke up this morning and we addressed this on the previous podcast 58. Great trade for Miami. Both of us would agree that if Dan Feeney's contract was not fully guaranteed, he probably wouldn't have made the 53-man roster. And Liam Eichenberg and Lester Cotton are going to serve as the guys who are going to be the backup centers right now until the Dolphins potentially upgrade the position either through the waiver wire or some veteran free agents or a guy who can potentially be signed to the practice squad. In terms of Noah Igbenogany, I've always said and felt like Noah needed a fresh start with another organization. He'll go down in history as a disappointing first-round pick for the Miami Dolphins. I don't think there's anything that he can do to sort of quill that. We've had more disappointing guys, Deion Jordan and the likes, but Noah was a disappointment. He should probably have always been to Jonathan Taylor or maybe Dobbins' selection, but he wasn't. And that's a situation where he gets a fresh start, and now the Dolphins have added a cornerback in Kelvin Joseph, who a former 2nd-round pick, a disappointing player for the Dallas Cowboys. From what I'm told, he's going to probably be groomed to play the nickel position, but he's got special teams value as a gunner. And when you add Keon Crossen to your IR and you lose Elijah Campbell to your to an injury, and more than likely he's probably going to be placed on IR pretty soon, if not miss the first month of the season, you've got to address your gunner spot. And this is a trade that the Dolphins said the Dallas Cowboys pursued. They found it beneficial for both Noah and themselves. They get a gunner. And right now, it'll be interesting to see how soon Kelvin Joseph can contribute to this team as a gunner. But his presence is definitely needed, especially with the removal of Justin Bethel, Elijah Campbell's injury, Keon Crossen being put on IR. This is a move that the Dolphins needed. And not only that, but they saved about $800,000 in cap space by making the trade Kelvin Joseph for Noah. And they've also got Kelvin locked up for next season at minimum salary.
No, and again, this was a case of getting some value for a first-round pick who hasn't necessarily panned out. Had the Dolphins kept him, could he have played a role on defense? Sure, except he was involved in a battle for that starting cornerback job opposite Xavier Howard when they're in the nickel, and it was clear that Eli Apple had basically won that battle over Noah.
Yep.
His play, I mean, he was pretty solid for most of training camp, but his play started dipping a little bit, and then we started seeing some of the same issues with Noah, and that was very problematic, very worrying.
Yeah. I think early in camp, you started to see that Vic Fangio's zone schemes definitely benefited Noah. But to be an effective zone team, you've got to be able to switch it up from time to time and play man coverage. And Noah and man, ooh, that's a problem. And it reared its ugly head in Houston. And from then you saw a guy go from first team to third team. And that is the story of Noah's career. Noah will do well, do well, do well. Then he'll struggle. And then he'll get into a rut and he'll go from first team to third team. Good luck to him. Best of luck to him. Noah's a guy that I root for. I don't think he's NFL starter material, but he's always going to be a guy that I root for just because he tries hard, he works hard, he cares. Just doesn't have ball skills.
No, and to close the book on him, obviously it's a bad first-round pick. I mean, let's be honest. And you and I both like the kid. He's a really, really good kid, and he had physical ability. And he's got some size. The issue was it was always going to be a project at cornerback after starting as a wide receiver at Auburn. And the fact that the Dolphins pass up on, they could have had their pick of any of the running backs in that 2020 draft, including Jonathan Taylor, wound up taking Noah instead. Yeah, not a good pick. Hopefully they can get some value out of Kelvin Joseph. And the word that I got out of Dallas was there was no guarantee he was going to make their 53 also. There's ability there. But he hasn't been able to put it together. Played at LSU and then Kentucky during his college career, but there is some physical ability there. So, and as far as the other trade is concerned,
he's a rapper.
Yes, he is.
He's a rapper.
What's his name? Fat Man Baby or something is his name or something to that effect.
I think you butchered it, but I'm going to try to find it for you.
Boss Man Fatty or something like that. It's actually a very cool name, I have to say.
Wow.
And then what? I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with his music. And then trading Dan Feeney, who you and I, as you mentioned, didn't think necessarily was going to make the roster, if not for this guaranteed money, to be able to get a 2024 6th-round pick for him. That's some good work. That's the good side of it. The bad side of it is as a guy you went out and signed in free agency in March. So from that standpoint, that's kind of a miss, but at least they got some value out of it. Any of the moves made today?
It's Boss Man Fat.
Okay, see, Boss Man Fat.
Boss Man Fat. Put some respect on his rap name.
Okay, Boss Man Fat. Do I have that right?
Boss Man Fat. I'm going to look up some Boss Man Fat videos.
Okay.
Huh?
And I'm not, so if you want to talk about it, if you want to talk about it in a subsequent podcast, by all means, I'm not sure I'm going to listen to it. No offense. And now he can actually, now we have Duke Riley does music. Teron Armstead also does music. Now we got another one. And there might be others who I'm missing. Any of the moves stand out to you as particularly surprising?
I think, and we should pay props and respect to the undrafted rookies, the Chris Brooks, the Brandon Peely, the Julian Hills, who made the initial 53-man roster. Clap it up for you. This is big from the standpoint of every year I've covered this franchise, undrafted rookies have made it to the 53-man roster. That's a tradition that I think this organization loves. And I think Mike McDaniel said it best. If you want to see a locker room celebrate, announce that an undrafted rookie's made the team, and they will cheer and they will celebrate. We all know you're a big fan of Chris Brooks, thoroughly happy about him being here. Big back. Chris Brooks said from the 95-yard touchdown he had in that joint practice that pissed off the defense, he's like, I'm here. And props to him. Julian Hill, we both noticed probably by the midseason point of training camp, hey, this guy can block. Hey, this guy's, Yeah, I initially would watch him and I'd be like, Julian Hill, why is he making a play? And then I had to learn his number, learn his name. And by the time, what was it, Houston game, we're like, wait a minute, this guy looks pretty good here.
Yeah.
So the fact that he makes it on the initial 53-man roster over guys like Tyler Kroft, who got waived, Eric Saubert, who's waived injured,
Put on IR.
put on IR, yeah, put on IR, and Tanner Connor, not totally surprising. I think we probably will see maybe Elijah Higgins and Tanner Connor come back if they're not claimed. That's for another day.
On the practice squad, yes.
On the practice squad. Brandon Peely, props to him. I personally did not think he was 53-man worthy, but considering how thirsty they are at defensive tackle right now, you just gotta figure somebody who can hold the line and hold it all together. So props to them. Congratulations. They shall be celebrated in that locker room, and it's well deserved. It's an honor, truly well deserved for all of those guys.
Yeah, you know what I like in it too, guys who make the 53 as undrafted free agents, and you see those videos all the time of college football players when a guy who's a walk-on eventually they give him a scholarship, and then you see his teammates just go nuts, and that's very cool.
Yes.
And I kind of liken a UDFA making the roster to that. It's kind of simple.
I thought for a minute you were trying to make these UDAs a Rudy.
No.
Yeah, great movie, by the way. I haven't seen that in a long time. I wonder if it holds up to age.
That's Notre Dame, and no, sorry, that's for a different story. Sorry, Durham Smythe, but no.
What you got against Notre Dame? Hold on, time out.
That's a whole different podcast. You remember I covered UM and I was a backup beat guy for UM and again, I'm going to date myself here in the 80s, and I heard stories from Melvin Bratton
during those.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
In fact, I interviewed Jerry Faust the week.
I've heard those stories too.
Before the Notre Dame game when the Hurricanes beat him 58-7, and it turned out to be his last game at Notre Dame. So yeah, and also I don't like the fact that they get preferential treatment with their own deal on NBC, and God forbid, no, we don't join the conference because we're special. No, sorry, and no offense to Durham Smythe or any Notre Dame fans out there. Important point I want to make is you mentioned Julian Hill making the team as a rookie free agent. Again, beside the fact that he clearly outplayed Elijah Higgins and Tanner Connor in the very short time that we saw him, the Dolphins right now have 2 tight ends on the roster. That's not going to stay like that. And Tyler Kroft, who, by the way, was not waived, his contract terminated because he's a vested veteran. I highly suspect he's going to be re-signed on Wednesday when guys get put on IR, on post-53 IR, which makes them eligible to come back after 4 games. That's going to create some roster spots. I think Tyler Kroft's going to get one of those. Wouldn't be surprised if Malik Reed wound up getting one of those. And then I certainly could see a defensive tackle from somewhere around the league, because right now they have 4 interior defensive linemen on the roster with Christian Wilkins, Raekwon Davis, Zach Sealer, and Brandon Peely. So I don't see that staying the way it is. And you could see Jalen Ramsey go on post 53 IR. Robert Jones could go on post 53 IR. Elijah Campbell could go on post 53 IR because chances are they're going to be out for about a month or so, at least in Jalen Ramsey's case. It's longer than that. But now that they've made the initial 53, they're eligible to come back. The thing that struck me also, and I just mentioned Robert Jones, is Dolphins kept 10 offensive linemen, which is a huge number. And even if Jones goes on IR, that's still 9 offensive linemen, which is more than they kept last year when it was 8. And there's one name that stands out there to me as being very surprised he made the 53. I mean, good for him, but I did not see Keon Smith making the 53. I just flat out didn't.
I think from a position versatility standpoint, Keon has value. I guess maybe he's going on the practice squad again whenever they need to demote somebody elevate somebody. What I find interesting is that Liam Eichenberg is probably going to be transitioning to center from guard, and Lester Cotton is going to be the backup center. Whether that means Alave,
Alama Uluave. I'll take care of that one.
Yes, and whether that means he's going to be back on the practice squad, I don't
Well,
know, but it'll be interesting to see. But also keep in mind with the Dan Feeney situation and no Igbenogany situation, those guys have to pass their physicals because we've had trades rescinded going back to last year when the tight ends, Adam Shaheen, got traded. Can't remember who he got traded to, but had to come
Houston,
on right back home. To the
Houston,
which one?
Houston Texans.
Yeah, had to come right back home because he failed his physical. And I still think that there's a possibility that Dan Feeney could fail his physical. I don't want to be, let me knock on wood because I want the Dolphins to get their 6th-round pick. But yeah, there's a medical issue there. You know, speaking of practice, we did see some guys who practiced today, like Perry Nickerson, who got waived. And I have to think that Perry Nickerson, because he practiced, is probably going to head to practice squad. But there was a guy who a lot of people reported would get waived, and Verone McKinley, who did not get waived initially. He was not part of today's waivers on Tuesday. Maybe he gets waived a little bit later. But I think part of the reason why he didn't get waived is because, one, depth at safety is pretty bad. And two, he's still vying for a safety starting spot. What are you shaking your head for? You think depth at safety is good?
Yes, we
Solid?
had the discussion
Decent?
this morning in the earlier podcast. I think their depth at safety is fine. Sorry, they don't have two Javon Hollands, but there are not many teams around the NFL who have two Javon Hollands. Between Javon Holland, Deshaun Elliott, Brandon Jones, Verone McKinley, and Elijah Campbell, once he's back from his injury, they're fine in terms of depth. And again,
How many are healthy right now? How many are healthy right now?
Well, Brandon Jones returned to practice today, did he not?
Yeah, but we don't know how much he did.
Okay, but
How many?
that's 4 who practiced today. The only one who didn't is Campbell. How many safeties you need?
At least 4.
Okay,
And right now, okay, all right. We'll see. We'll see how long that lasts. Let's break down some of the, unless you want to discuss something else on the roster.
No, well,
I would like to.
I'm looking at the list here and I'm trying to think like who are practice squad worthy, who of the 9 players who are going to be exposed to waivers have the best chance of getting claimed or the worst chance from the Dolphins standpoint. Ethan Bonner, Tanner Connor, Cameron Good, Ryan Hayes, the rookie 7th-round pick, Elijah Higgins, the rookie 6th-round pick, Braylon Sanders, Bryce Thompson, the aforementioned Alama Oluwave, and Trill Williams. Are we thinking one of those guys gets claimed off waivers by another team?
You know my stance on that. No.
No, your stance is no, and I don't care even if they do. That's your stance.
Yeah.
No, that's okay. And out of those 9, I certainly would expect a few of them. I certainly would expect Hayes and Higgins to be re-signed to the practice squad. Once that happens, I would think Braylon Sanders will be back on the practice squad. Oluwave, definitely. Trill Williams, very possibly. Remember, Dolphins can fill out 6
Cameron Good.
spots.
Yep.
Cameron Good. It's 16 spots, and the rules, you can have 6 veterans of unlimited experience. You can have up to 10 who have 2 or more years of accrued seasons. And then among the guys, Myles Gaskin certainly would be a candidate if he doesn't sign with another team. Mind you, he doesn't have to clear waivers, so he can sign with any other team which feels it has a need at running back. Where do we go next? Do we go Cedric Wilkins? Cedric Wilkins. Wow. Cedric Wilson, Christian Wilkins.
Let's get Cedric Wilson and get it out the way. Dolphins shook him down, which is part of the NFL. Made him take a $2 million pay cut. He has an opportunity to gain that $2 million in incentives. And really, it's a situation where he's kind of the 6th receiver. I'm not necessarily certain what he brings from a value standpoint outside of kickoff returner. Not kickoff returner, punt returner. But now his restructured contract makes his deal a lot more movable. It would be easier to tell the Dallas Cowboys organization, hey, you got some injuries at wide receiver. Cedric knows your offense, or the Rams, because that's who has their offensive coordinator. He knows your offense. Here he is. We already paid $3 million of his salary. He's on the books for $2 million this season. It breaks down to $111,000 a game. Would you like to take him at the midseason point? And somebody might be tempted to, especially if they have a need at wide receiver. Whereas previously, when he was on the books for $7 million and was one of your 10 highest paid players because of the horrendous contract that the organization signed him to, he was not going to be moved. So now you have him in a movable situation. It was one of the many things that the Dolphins organization did today to create some cap relief, which is necessary because the capocalypse is coming. Saved $800,000 trading Noah Igbenogany, trimmed $2 million in salary on Cedric Wilson, moved Dan Feeney's contract. You're only going to get probably about $1.2 million in savings. Right. But you saved roughly, that's two, and then you've saved $5 million today in cap space. Not even addressing the cutting, the waive injured of Keon Cross, and who will probably get an injury settlement. So that's potentially.
By the way, time out. Just for record keeping purposes, he was not waived injured. He was put on IR.
He was put on IR, but he can sign an injury settlement agreement, sure, be waived from IR and sign an injury settlement agreement, go play elsewhere, and potentially re-sign with the Miami Dolphins. That's a little bit later in the process, but it's all possible. But ultimately, let's say the Dolphins cleared $7 million in cap space, putting it with what they had after the Zach Sealer deal. So we don't know the numbers yet because the contracts aren't produced to the NFLPA. But either way, it's pretty solid work for an organization that is financially cash strapped right now.
No, sure. No, and then again, as you mentioned, and I'm with you, the Dolphins, I'm like dancing in circles here. The Dolphins did some good work with the Cedric Wilson contract, making it much easier to trade. And as you mentioned, Dolphins have 6 wide receivers on the active roster, right? On their initial 53. And the one who was left out was Robbie Chosen, who I believe you think might be headed back to the practice squad. He can sign with any team if a team reaches out to him. He has made it clear he wants to play for the Dolphins because that's his hometown team. He's from Broward somewhere. The 2 questions with Robbie Chosen that I would have is, would he be willing to play on the practice squad? And is it possible that a team's going to reach out to him?
Yeah, I don't have any of the answers to that. I'm a Robbie Chosen fan, and I support him whatever happens. I think he's done enough to earn a spot on the roster. Problem is he doesn't help you on special teams where River Craycraft does. And River Craycraft is probably going to begin the season as your gunner. And as I continue to say, it's an important position. And it's a spot that he's really earned. So props to him. Braxton Berrios is probably going to be your number 3 receiver, but River Craycraft might be your number 4 because he's going to be game active. Let's get to another guy who spoke today, which was Christian Wilkins, who came out, professed his love for the Miami Dolphins, says, I want to be part of this organization. I'm ending my hold in, except for I don't have a contract, but I'm here and I'm back for my teammates. I'm going to be a good team leader. I'm going to be a good team captain. But bump the organization. No, he didn't say that. He both sides cannot come to an agreement. Now, generally, when we're headed into this portion of the season, Chris Greer, based on history, gets deals done the weekend before the regular season starts. So I think if, just because Christian is back practicing, Christian has ended his holdout, keep in mind, why would he want to practice?
Hold in.
Hold in. Why would he want to practice against people and individuals where he could potentially get hurt? Now, games count, seasons count. We all knew Christian would be back because Christian's too cheap or fiscally conscious, fiscally responsible. Let me correct myself.
Much better put.
Yeah, fiscally responsible to subject himself to fines and lose money on contract. And truth of the matter is, both sides are not close. They haven't been close. I've continued to say Christian wants more money than Christian wants what his peers are getting. And in his mind, he's deserving of what his peers are getting. And honestly, in the fan base's mind, he's deserving of what his peers are getting. The problem that Christian has is the Dolphins, when you factor in the fifth-year option for $10.7 million and potentially putting the franchise tag on him, which wouldn't be easy, but it's possible in 2024, you've got Christian locked in for $16.5 million for the next 2 years. 32 total, 33 total. Why would I sign him to a contract for $18.5, $19 million a year? And I only count real money, not the fake money where you hear $24 million a year. Yes, raising your hand. Go ahead.
I am raising my hand. Well, you asked the question, why would they want to sign him? Because they would want to sign him because Christian Wilkins is a foundational piece of this team who brings more than just good play on the field. He's also a high character guy, great leader, brings an energy.
So I'm giving you $2 to $3 million more a year because you're a foundational guy and bring great energy.
If you start becoming more of an impact player as a pass rusher, yeah. And that's, to me, that's going to be the ultimate test of exactly how high the Dolphins will be willing to go with this contract. Because you mentioned the other guys, and I didn't mean to monopolize the conversation here, but you mentioned the other guys, the other defensive tackles who Christian is looking at, who all got deals in the offseason. And again, I've said this before, last year was the year of the wide receiver. This year was the year of the defensive tackle. Dexter Lawrence, Jeffrey Simmons, Quinnen Williams, Deron Payne, and there were more actually, and I forget. All those guys are a lot more impactful players as pass rushers than Christian is. He might be the best run-stopping interior defensive lineman in the NFL. But this is where you have to ask yourself, how much is that worth?
Yep.
And when the game is won more so through the air and stopping the passing game than running the ball or stopping the run.
And it's about creating pressures. And I think for Christian to get that big time salary, he's going to have to more tackles for loss, higher sack production, higher quarterback hit, and quarterback pressure production. It's great to have 94, 98 tackles in a season, but how many impact plays are you making? And that's where you stack it up. Now, let me tell you the benefit for the Miami Dolphins to not do an extension for Christian Wilkins this year. While he's on the books for 10.7 now on the fifth-year option, and his number would lower this year, probably about $4 million if you did sign him to a multi-year extension on par with what his peers are making. Next year's number is going to be $20 million in terms of the cap hit, no matter how you slice it.
Right.
Now, if you, let's say, made him play on the fifth-year option and then sign him to an extension next year with the threat of the franchise tag, or maybe not franchise tag him and then sign him to an extension, that year one cap hit is going to be low in a year where you're going to need that cap space. So just think big picture when you think about Christian Wilkins. I know he's not thinking about that. No player wants to go into a season where they're playing on the final year of the contract, but many of them are forced to do so. And that includes guys who are playing on fifth-year options. That includes guys like Austin Jackson, who had their fifth-year options denied. That includes guys like Raekwon Davis, who's playing for $1.4 million this season. And that includes guys like Robert Hunt, who's now, that's actually got a deal done, probably the most underpaid starter underpaid Dolphins player on the team. So nobody out there is going to shed a tear for Christian Wilkins, who, oh God, how disrespectful is it that I'm the sixth highest paid player on the team at $10.7 million, when there are a lot of players out there who are making 1/3, if not 1/4, if not 1/5 of what he's making this season.
Yeah, except that what Christian wants more, I think, as much as the pay bump is the security of having a long-term deal to where God forbid, there's, something major goes wrong or, major injury happens. That's the
you
last
can get your security if you want to accept a $16.5 million a year contract.
Right.
You can have it.
That's an excellent point, my friend. That is an excellent point. Here's the other topic we haven't discussed yet, and we have to, even though there's no news, but the fact that there's no news is news. That's Jonathan Taylor. As we assume everybody knows by now, there was no trade to the Miami Dolphins or to any team on this day, and the Colts stuck him on reserve PUP, meaning he's out for the first 4 games because of a back injury.
Love the air quotes for those who can't see it or listen to the podcast.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't
listen, and I don't think he's going to play for the Colts, but I do think that not being able to get a deal done, and I know that they would have settled for, based on what my sources are telling me, they would have settled for a second, wanted a first, weren't getting a first, and what they were offered was in the neighborhood of a 3rd-round pick. That wasn't good enough for Jonathan Taylor, so they're sitting on him and hoping that some team gets motivated in the first month or 2 of the season by injuries to the running back unit and decides to send them a 2nd-round pick for Jonathan Taylor. Right. The Dolphins, this is a double-edged sword for the Indianapolis Colts, because while the Dolphins are probably the number 1 team interested and probably the number 1 bidder, in a month, they might fall in love with what they see from the run game of Raheem Mostert and Jeff Wilson and Devon Chain, who should be getting healthy, and might not see a need for Jonathan Taylor, or the thirst level can increase. But the issue is, now that you have Jonathan Taylor for 4 less games, how intrigued will I be to raise my offer? But then again, the Dolphins traded for Bradley Chubb and gave up a 1st-round pick for a guy who came in the second half of the season and agreed to a $100 million contract.
Another guy who also wanted a new contract. From where I said, this is kind of like similar to the Jalen Ramsey situation. The Dolphins saw like a highly talented guy who wants out. They make a phone call. Let's see if we can get like a great player at a really, really good value, and we'll lowball the offer. And then if they bite, awesome. And then we'll deal with the contract situation. Again, I mean, Jonathan Taylor this year has got, like, was it 4.1, 4.3 mil or something like that. And then if not, then we'll move on with what we have. I mean, the Dolphins keep saying we love everybody we have at running back, which they do to a certain extent, not enough that they don't keep sniffing around for other running backs. I mean, if we're going to be honest,
if I ain't married, I'm still looking.
Oh, and they're definitely they're highly single when it comes to their running backs. I mean, they sniffed around on Saquon Barkley, on DeAndre Swift, on Josh Jacobs, on Dalvin Cook, and now on Jonathan Taylor. And it could be very well that
they're in an open relationship.
Yes, they are, absolutely. But it could be that what they have is perfectly fine if the blocking's up front. I mean, last year the yards per carry average was very good. So to me, Jonathan Taylor was always, even the Dalvin Cook was the same thing. It's always a luxury as opposed to a need. There are bigger needs in other places on the roster, even though I think their depth is better than where you think it is. What?
Where are the needs?
Well, they still could use
a tight end on the roster.
Well, they could use a tight end, which is going to bring me to something that bothered me when I saw it today. You may not agree, but I saw this trade. Albert O from Denver. I'm not even going to try to pronounce his last name because I would only butcher it. But Albert O, who was going to get released or waived, winds up not getting waived. Instead, the Denver Broncos trade him to the Eagles for the low price. Talk about bargain shopping, of a swap of late round picks in 2025, not even next year, the year after that. And it's like a 6 for a 5 or a 7 for a 6. I can't remember, but it was like ridiculous. And to me, for a guy who's got absolutely some intriguing potential, to me, the Dolphins, I would hope at the very least, made a phone call and kicked the tires on that possibility, because again, they have 2 tight ends on their roster. And this is something that I think the Dolphins should have investigated. And you're one who likes to go thrift store shopping. If that's not your definition right there, I don't know what is.
Yeah, I agree. But that, good teams do those kind of trades. I'm at the point where depth is so bad at this team that I need all the draft picks that I can have. Not saying that they're going to select good draft selections.
It's in 2025. Are we worried about 2 years down the road? I mean,
I don't want the next GM to not have a arsenal of draft picks.
Oh, wow. He went there. Holy moly. Yeah.
Listen, very small window to get it all done, to win big. then there comes a massive reset. I'm not naive enough to Chris Greer has been a tremendous survivor. He's got to win big within the next 2 years to continue to survive. Just saying.
One would think. I don't disagree. One would think. It's not because they haven't made the big moves.
So, and I'm trading my draft picks for Jonathan Taylor. I'm not trading it for a tight end that I don't even know how to say his name. But as I continue to say,
does that mean he's not a good player because we can't pronounce his name? That's funny. That's awesome. I'm not trading.
I don't know that much. Yeah, I don't know how he is. Who's to say you can't find what you need on the waiver wire, or you won't get a second go at him? Be patient.
Again,
or maybe they love Julian Hill. The way this team has operated the last couple of years, going back to Christian Wilkins' first year, Julian Hill might be the top rookie performer this season, just like Kader Kohu was the top rookie performer last year, or Preston Williams was a top rookie performer in 2019. No, Nick Needham. So maybe it's Julian Hill that just comes out and is the next Kader Kohu.
That's fair.
We don't know.
No, you're right. We don't know. I do know Alberto. I don't know how to pronounce his last name, but I do know him, and I know he was like a 4th round pick, and I know there's some high end athleticism there. So,
okay. And how quickly would it be to learn this offense?
Who knows? He probably could have learned it quickly enough to be a factor at some point early in the regular season. I'm not buying this thing of, my head is swimming. I can't do anything. I know it happens to certain players as a general rule. I think that's kind of overblown a little bit. Well, we've touched on a lot of different topics here. Anything else stand out before we wrap this up?
No. Where would you like to see this roster moving forward? Where are the holes and what are the needs?
Definitely. Well, they need a tight end, and again, I suspect Tyler Cross going to be re-signed Wednesday or this week. To me, they absolutely have a screaming need for an interior defensive lineman, preferably of the veteran variety. I think those are the 2 spots that really scream out to me. I know you
center. Take a spin at the center. See what's there. Tight end, you definitely have a need there. Defensive line, you said it. Interior defensive lineman. And I would probably take a spin at a safety because I'm not comfortable with what you have from an injury standpoint because there are very few bodies in that unit right now. And all it takes is one injury and you're paper thin again. But that's it for the All Dolphins podcast. Second podcast of the day. Like, share, subscribe, click the little bell button. Tell your family members, tell your friends, tell your lovers, tell your coworkers. And we thank you and appreciate you for watching. You can find all our work for free on alldolphins.com. What'd you say?
Gratis.
What does that mean? You speaking French to me?
French or slangish. Gratis. Also, we should mention we're available wherever you get your audio podcast on the Fans First Sports Network under Miami Dolphins Insider. Wednesday is when the practice squad will be set up. We'll see if there are any waiver claims, either Dolphins claiming players or Dolphin players being claimed. And then GM Chris Greer also is addressing the media today, which should be very interesting. So Omar, tell you what, let's do this again. We're figuring about middle of the afternoon tomorrow. So until then, again, thanks for watching.
We'll be back.